Hey guys, this is Brett Darian back again for another Nintendo 64 video. And this video I've been really excited to make for the past few weeks. This has been a few weeks in the making. I have modded my Nintendo 64 for RGB. Now if you're not familiar with RGB is, basically many older consoles that are older than the Dreamcast are basically capable of outputting better video quality than the composite or the S-video cables that we usually use. You know, like when I was a kid, I used just the composite cables, the yellow cables, and later on I learned that S-video was a little better, so then I started using that. But they're capable of RGB though, and RGB is much better than either of those. That gives you pretty much the best video quality, natively anyway, out of these consoles. Now, the Nintendo 64 is a little different because the Nintendo 64 does not have RGB natively. From the factory, the RGB is not enabled on these Nintendo 64s. So, that means you have to add it yourself. You have to mod your system to output RGB. So, it's not exactly an easy thing to do, but it's also not hard either. It depends on what mod you choose to install. There are different kinds of N64 mods you can put in. There's an easy one, there's a more difficult one, and there's even an HDMI mod that you can put in these things, but they're even more expensive and they're also more complicated, but they are doable. So, but I just chose to go with the easiest route for now, and that was just using Voultar's N64 RGB kit. So with that, you just install a simple little chip, and you install a few little wires, and that's it, you're done. So I've already completed the mod. This system is modded for RGB. So I have filmed a little bit of footage right after I did the mod, and so I will show that to you right now. So this is the guts of a Nintendo 64. You could actually play the entire console like this if you wanted to. This is everything you really need. This is the Revision 3 board, and the work for the mod is underneath the board. So we look at this right here. This is the mod. This is the RGB chip, and this has to be soldered right onto the pins for the multi-AV out. Now what this mod does is that it basically grabs the RGB signal that's coming right off the board and just putting it out through the multi-AV out. So you have to solder these wires onto these three terminals of R8, R9, R10. So R8 is R, R9 is G, and R10 is B. So that's the RGB signal. And this wire here is for C-Sync. And this is basically just the signal that tells your TV how to display the image. So we grab that from here, and that also goes into the chip. So now since this is a Revision 3 board, there are also some components that you have to remove. And those components are these three components down here. We got R1 and C22. These right here, they have to be removed. And also R15 and R16. Those two components also have to be removed. Now, if this is a Revision 4 board, Revision 4 boards actually already have these components disabled, so you don't actually have to remove them. But on Revisions 3, 2, and 1, you do have to remove them. Now, it's also worth noting that this mod here, Voultar's RGB mod chip here, these mods will only work with early versions of the N64. This will not work with a later version of the system. These only work with early versions of the N64. But either way though, so that's my solder job. Again, this is my first time ever doing a system mod, and also my first time soldering. So while definitely not a professional job, for a beginner though, I don't think it's too bad. I'm actually pretty happy with it. And it was actually pretty fun to do. Alright, so as you saw there, the mod is actually pretty simple. It's just a few wires with the RGB chip. So it's not really that hard at all. It's not that complicated. So as for actually getting video out of this thing, usually with RGB you had to use a special cable called SCART. And SCART cables were only released in Europe. They were not released here in the States. We could never use SCART. So how do we get video out of this thing? How am I going to use this RGB? Well, that's where this comes into play. So we are going to open this up. This is a package from CastlemaniaGames.com. And using this, we will be able to get video out of the system using RGB. Let's see, so they wrapped it in this bubble wrap. There we go. And here it is. So, this is essentially a component cable for your Nintendo 64 or your Super Nintendo. They can be used for either one. So this you just plug in directly right into your Nintendo 64, and you can grab the RGB signal and hook it up to your TV using components. Let's see, to unwrap these twist ties here. Now obviously this is a disclaimer. You cannot just hook these cables up to any Nintendo 64 and expect them to work, because it will not. You have to have, a modded Nintendo 64 for RGB for these cables to work. This is not just a plug and play solution, unfortunately. So anyway, like I said, these cables are just, you just take your N64 and they just plug right into the Mote AV out right there, and then there you go. You have components. Now on the side of the cable here, there is one switch here. Well, that's actually not a switch. Oh, no, it actually is a switch. There's this thing right there. It pops right off, and you can toggle that on and off. I'm not exactly sure what that is. It looks like it might be a brightness setting or maybe a contrast setting. I'm not exactly sure, but I will investigate that further. So for now, guys, that's the explanation. So let's actually hook all this up, because I haven't actually tested this yet to see if it works. So this is the mode that I've been waiting for. Let's hook this up and see if this works. How much better is the picture quality going to be now that it's RGB modded? We will find out right now. Okay, everyone, so it is currently the next day, or technically the next evening. And so here's what happened. So yesterday, after I filmed the clips that you just saw, I hooked the 64 up, as you can see behind me, and I turned it on, and there was no picture. There was sound, but no pictures, just a black screen. So I took the 64 back out, I disassembled it again, I took all the screws out and everything, and looked over my work, and of course it still looked the same. It didn't look like there was anything wrong, but I still tried to fix it. I went ahead and added some more solder to some joints. I moved some wires around and stuff, and then I hooked it back up and everything, and still the same result. Sometimes a picture would appear, but it would be like just a solid color of blue or red or yellow or green. Like, it could just be a solid color. And later on, eventually, what I realized was that if you just moved the 64 just a little bit, like if you touched it or if you lifted it up a little bit, the picture would be fine. Like, it would suddenly show correctly. But then when you let it back down again, the picture would again go bad, and it would either go out completely, or again, it'd just be a solid color of a certain color. It'd be blue, red, green, whatever. So it was acting like something was loose, like there was a loose connection or something, probably in one of the 3 wires that carry the RGB signal. Like I mean, at least one of the wires was loose, or somewhere along the line there was not a solid connection. So that's the only thing I could figure. So for hours, I kept troubleshooting it. I took it back out, I still added more solder, and still, you know, messed with wires, moved them around, took the wires out, resoldered them in again, and I was still getting the same results. Nothing I did would fix it. So toward the end there, it was going to be nighttime, and I was starting to get frustrated and starting to get impatient and started to actually, frankly, lose interest in the project. So what I finally ended up doing as a last resort, I taped the wires and solder points to make sure they didn't move around or touch anything else that they shouldn't be touching. And that actually worked. The system works fine now. The RGB picture shows great. It's working properly. But I still am not satisfied with it because I feel like the job is not finished. And it's just like, even though it is working technically, I still feel like the job is unfinished and it wasn't done right. So I'm disappointed in that, but again, I am a novice soldering person, you know. I've never soldered anything before. This is the very first soldering project I've done in my entire lifetime. So with that in mind, and the fact that I didn't, you know, fry anything or brick anything, or the fact that it works at all, is probably a miracle. So I should be happy for that, but I still have this little disappointment that it's still not proper, because I don't think you should be needing to use the tape. You shouldn't have to use tape for this to work. But anyway, long story short, this is working now. It's working properly. The only other bad thing here is that the 64 still outputs 240p. This doesn't upconvert anything. The HD Retrovision cables, of course, don't upconvert anything. So it still outputs 240 through component. And neither of my capture devices support 240p using component. So that means I cannot capture footage directly from the system to show you guys, not through component anyway. My AverMedia capture card just shows it's out of range, and my Hauppauge HD PVR2, which I just got recently, thinking that it may work for this, it also does not work. It just shows just a glitchy picture, just a bunch of fuzz, and that's all it shows. So neither of those will work. So unfortunately, all I can do is just take a picture directly of the TV screen using this camera and just show you the differences that it shows. I realize this is not, the best way to show it, and I wish I could do direct footage. I definitely wish I could, but unfortunately, I cannot. There are things I could buy to, correct this. I can buy an upscaler or buy a line doubler, which will take a 240p signal and kind of convert it to 480 so that you can at least use it on these devices. But that's another expense, and I feel like I've already, invested enough into this project. So unfortunately, like I said, this is all I can do. And after all of the roadblocks I was running into, I was debating if I should even finish this video and, and publish it and everything, and if it was even worth my time to do. But I decided to finish it and put it up just to show you guys what my results were, at least give you an idea of what the results are, and to also tell anybody that's thinking about doing something like this to practice your soldering and make sure you solder good, make sure your solder joints are clean, and make sure your wires are fully inserted into the holes, or the vias as they're properly called, and just take your time, do it well, and I think you'll be happy with it. So that being said, let's just look at the footage that I was able to capture. Alright, so we're going to start with some very rough footage that I captured directly from my TV. So this is composite running from the N64. So I just wanted to give you an idea of what this looks like. So this is Mario's face, and here we have a brief shot of the file select screen. And this is some brief gameplay footage of me walking around the outside of the castle. And you may want to notice that there's some blurry textures and a lot of fuzz around certain other textures, which is pretty common with composite. Alright, so now we're going to switch to S-Video, and if you look closely, there is definitely an improvement in the picture. The picture is sharper, and the colors are cleaner and a bit easier to see, and the file select screen also looks better. And text definitely looks better with S-Video. If you look closely at the corners, the numbers are definitely sharper, and there's not as much of that blurriness around them. And here we go. We're just walking around the castle a little bit, just giving you an idea of what the world looks like with composite. You have to excuse my autofocus. It's kind of messing up here, unfortunately. And now, finally, we are able to go to RGB component. And this is by far the best looking of the three. It's the brightest image, and it's the sharpest image, and definitely the cleanest image. The colors are vibrant and saturated, and the text is just very sharp and easy to read. Now, it's definitely not high definition quality. The only bad thing in the picture that still remains is there's still dithering like around textures, especially far away. That's just how the N64 works, and there's really not much you can do about that. But other than that, the picture is very clean and sharp and vibrant, and this is definitely the way to play the N64 today in 2019. Now, one other thing that I wanted to do is do a close-up shot here of the star counter, and this is using composite, and you can see all the blurriness and fuzziness around the numbers and around the star texture. It looks pretty bad when you see it up close here like this. So we're going to switch to S-Video and see how this looks, and boom, this looks a lot better. So S-Video is definitely better than composite, so if you can use it on your TV, that's the easiest thing to get a hold of. But if we switch to RGB, once again, this is clearly the winner. This is the brightest, this is the sharpest, and just the most clean picture that you can get out of the N64, with the exception of maybe the HDMI mod. But I already mentioned that's more expensive and hard to do. Well, everyone, that is it. So once again, my apologies for not being able to get better quality footage. But unfortunately, this is all I could do. I had to work with what I had, and this is what I had. So I appreciate you guys sticking with me. Hopefully you've enjoyed watching this video, and maybe you've learned something from it. So anyway, guys, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care.